There's no place in America for this kind of violence.
If she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know. But
a lot has come out since the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, and I want to go over just some of the points, some of the newsworthy items, and other opinions that I find interesting. Starting with, how the hell did this happen? You have Secret Service on the roof, right behind Trump, facing the direction where the shooter was on the roof. Massive security failure. There's even videos of people in the crowd recording the guy on the roof. They saw him there. They were telling law enforcement there, hey, there's a guy on the roof. He still managed to be there long enough to get the shots off. Wild. So, at the very least here, a massive security failure. I'm sure they will continue investigating this internally to understand how it got to this point. But man, wild. Now, Joe Biden came out shortly after with this speech. I'm going to play a bit of it here. I find this to be annoying, and I'm going to tell you exactly why.
A former president was shot, an American citizen killed, while simply exercising his freedom to support the candidate of his choosing. We cannot, we must not go down this road in America. We've traveled it before throughout our history. Violence has never been the answer. Whether it's with members of Congress of both parties being targeted and shot, or a violent mob attacking the Capitol on January 6th, or a brutal attack on the spouse of former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, or information and intimidation on election officials, or the kidnapping plot against the sitting governor, or an attempted assassination on Donald Trump. There is no place in America for this kind of violence, or for any violence ever. Period. No exceptions. We can't allow this violence to be normalized.
All right, so look, this is not even really an issue with Joe Biden's speech as much as it's an issue for me with just the way politics is so performative. Who is this speech for? What is the actual purpose of this speech? Because the purpose of it clearly is not to get people to not be violent. Is a 20-year-old Trump supporter watching Joe Biden and thinking, you know what, I was going to commit violence, but now Joe Biden has talked me out of it. Or the guy that attacked Nancy Pelosi. Or the, Jan 6 people. Notice every single specific example he utilized there was conservative violence, because that's what it tends to be. That's what it is. And this is a combination of, as we'll get to, the rhetoric that is being used on the right, but I think it's, when it comes to acts that are actually carried out, the real issue is an easy access to firearms. In addition to the complete lack of healthcare, mental health support that people clearly need. So in the case of this individual, Thomas Matthew Crooks, again, this was the shooter, 20-year-old, and used an AR-style 5.56 rifle, the same sorts of weapons that Democrats have been trying to ban forever and are continually blocked by Republicans. As Bloomberg writes here, what motivated Trump's shooter is irrelevant. It's about guns. Politicians and Supreme Court justices have made it too easy for people like Thomas Matthew Crooks to get their hands on AR-15s. This is the problem. It was purchased legally. That's the problem. So it was apparently his father's weapon. His dad didn't lock it up like he should. Again, I have other videos on how Canada addresses gun laws, because you can still own a firearm in Canada, but there are proper protections in place. There's training in place. There's background checks, and once you own a weapon or a firearm, you have to lock it up. These sorts of protections just don't exist that lead to a situation where someone has a very easy access to a powerful firearm like this, where they can sit, over 100 yards away and end up killing somebody in the crowd. So James Tate posts this. I think this is just brilliant. Democrats should introduce a gun control bill called the Donald Trump Safety and Gun Control Bill and make Republicans vote against it. It's a fun political tack that Democrats are too incompetent to put into action, but that would be brilliant. And also worth noting here on the shooter, campaign finance data shows $15 donation made by Crooks to Act Blue for the Progressive Turnout Project. That was made in January 2021, the day Biden was inaugurated. And then he ended up unsubscribing from those emails shortly after, and then became a registered Republican when he hit the age to vote. When it comes to, we'll get to more on who this guy was, but it sounds like he definitely leaned conservative, but it also doesn't seem like to me he was really strong politically either way. This may have been, again, purely my speculation. This may have been a way for him just to kind of end it for himself and go out, making a name for himself in the process. So he worked as a dietary aide in a nursing home, and a colleague called him or described him as the sweetest guy. And they worked together to find an easier way for nursing home residents to open ranch dressing packets. So it sounds like he had like a normal, quiet life. He was bullied in high school, which may have led to some of his isolation.
I mean, he would sit alone at lunch. I mean, he was just an outcast, and you know how kids are nowadays, so they're gonna see someone like that and they're gonna target him because they think it's funny or whatever. So it's the best way I can describe it. And it's honestly kind of sad. Like, I don't want to say this is what provoked it, but you never know.
Yeah. You said he was a loner?
Yeah. I want to say he was a loner more because he was quiet, but like he was just bullied. Like he was bullied so much.
This was high school.
Yeah.
What did they, do you remember at all what they said to him or called him?
No. He was just made fun of, I guess, for the way he dressed or his appearance.
And some other information from his high school. Smith shared an American history class. This is Smith, one of his peers in school, shared an American history class with Crooks and remembered a mock debate where their teacher made students stand on one side of the classroom or another to signal their allegiance. Quote, the majority of the class were on the liberal side, but Tom, no matter what, always stood his ground on the conservative side. That's still the picture I have of him, just standing alone on one side while the rest of the class was on the other. This is a guy who he sounds like he was just, an outcast, a loner. And people in those situations, they either need somebody to reach out to them and show them that you don't have to be so lonely, you don't have to be alone, or that on top of that, they need mental health support. And there was just a severe lack of that. I mean, you combine that with the access to weapons, and it's the same story for a lot of these shootings. Fox News with the headline here, this is amazing, and I'm going to spend the next several tabs on this. Democrats and the media brought Trump derangement syndrome to fever pitch. Now it's drawn blood. So this idiot attempted to blame Democrats and media who are critical of Trump for the obvious terrible things he has done and incited, which is, I find amazing. Like, you blame this. Take a look at what conservative, or I should say, I guess in this case, Republican culture is. Here is Hillary Clinton behind bars on this magazine, on this gun. And again, Trump Jr. Imagine this was like Hunter Biden, and this was Trump here. Imagine how much of a story that would be right now. This is Trump Jr. with this shit. And you may have seen these already. Joe Biden in the back of a pickup truck. Several of these. It's incredible. You don't see this shit. At least, look, I've never seen an example of this where it's Trump. I'm sure it exists. But it's not a cultural thing the way it is with all these versions of Donald Trump, or I should say of Joe Biden in the back of these trucks. Then you have shit like this. This is 2016.
If she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know. But
imagine that was Joe Biden. If Trump gets to pick his judges, nothing you can do, folks. But Second Amendment people, you never know. Imagine. The thing with Trump, there has been so much. I completely forgot about this clip because there has been so much. How can any one person possibly retain all the information, all the shit that Trump has said? He made it easier for the mentally ill to get guns when he rolled back Obama regulations. So this is a regulation on firearms. It came after the House and Senate, both of which were Republican controlled at the time, passed a bill, HJ Res 40, which revoked the Obama era regulation. Also here.
And we'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi, who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know? And she's against building a wall at our border, even though she has a wall around her house, which obviously didn't do a very good job.
Imagine the same month that the attempt on Trump's life happens. Biden goes out and gives a speech. How's his ear doing, folks? The Secret Service didn't do a good job. Like, just mocking, just joking around about the attempt on his life. Again, people expect this from Trump, so it doesn't hit the same way. But just because you expect it doesn't mean you should be accustomed to it. It doesn't mean that it should be normalized. It should not be okay just because you expect him to say this. This is right before the attack on the Capitol.
Try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong.
You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength. And then they attack the Capitol. Here's a Kansas Republican Party fundraiser. It's just, violence is embedded in the culture. And it's completely excused. Here's a North Carolina Republican gubernatorial nominee, Mark Robinson, a featured speaker at the Republican National Convention. And this is him last week.
You know, it was a time when we used to meet evil on the battlefield, and guess what we did to it? We killed it. We didn't quibble about it. We didn't argue about it. We didn't fight about it. We killed it. Some liberal somewhere is going to say that sounds awful. Too bad. Get mad at me if you want to. Some folks need killing. It's time for somebody to say it. It's not a matter of vengeance. It's not a matter of being mean or spiteful. It's a matter of necessity. It's time to call out those guys in green and go have them handled.
Imagine a candidate, a Democratic candidate for governor, said, some folks need killing. It's time for someone to say it. It's just, there are just completely different expectations when it comes to the right versus the left. People are criticizing Democrats for warning about Trump. People are criticizing the media for criticizing Trump and the shit that he's done because that has created this anger towards Donald Trump. Even though, again, the shooter was Republican, who knows how political he actually was. But this is why the political climate is so dangerous because the media and Democrats are correctly calling out Donald Trump, and in my opinion, aren't doing it enough or to the degree that they should be doing it, but they're correctly calling him out. And then this has created this divide. I'm seeing one side here create the real division, especially as it applies to this encouraging of violence over and over again. So this is, by the way, I can't even go through all this because there are 54 cases, and this was 2020. So I would be here all day reading through these cases. But ABC News finds 54 cases invoking Trump in connection with violence, threats, alleged assaults. So I will link to this below the video. You can go through them yourself, see the many examples. Here's the first one they bring up. In Boston, after he and his brother beat a sleeping homeless man of Mexican descent with a metal pipe or pole, the guy told police, quote, "Donald Trump was right. All these illegals need to be deported." The victim, however, was not in the U.S. illegally. Not that it should matter. You shouldn't beat the guy anyways. But they eventually pleaded guilty. Again, Trump referenced here. Penn State University student Nicholas was charged with ethnic intimidation and other crimes for threatening to put a bullet in a young Indian man on campus. And said, quote, "Donald Trump is running for president of the U.S., saying that we've got to check people out more closely." So this is his attorney saying this. Like, this is over and over again. There are so many examples of violence being committed or attempted violence, and they're invoking Donald Trump in the process. And this was to see to see Republicans do this shit. God protected Trump. Fred Gutenberg replying to Marco Rubio here saying, "Hey, Marco Rubio, are you saying that God did not protect my daughter and the other 16 killed who you represented in Parkland?" Like, this idea that God protected Trump. Okay, but so God killed the Trump supporter. And look, I didn't even bring up the other obvious criticism here of the Biden speech. We cannot allow this violence to be normalized. This is a man who is still currently supporting a far right-wing Israeli government committing mass atrocities in Gaza, with numbers now estimated at 186,000 killed. To see, Democrats who have not been critical of Israel at all come out and say, "Oh, I condone all political violence." That's a great thing to say. But when you as a politician are continuing to support mass atrocities being committed by the Israeli state, it doesn't really mean a whole lot.